Next on AM 1480 WLEA, the Newsmaker Show. Here's Brian O'Neill.
And today's show is yesterday's weekly press call with quoting Republican Congressman Tom Reed. He opens up talking about a couple of things. One, the Problem Solvers Caucus success in getting some reforms passed. And two, the National Comedy Center title he wants to give to the Comedy Museum over in Jamestown. Here's Congressman Reed.
Okay, thanks everybody for joining us this week. I wanted to highlight maybe locally something we did that got some national attention last week, and that's when I crossed over to support the Democratic rules package on the floor of the House. I wanted to highlight my colleagues who joined me, John Keckle and Brian Fitzpatrick, two members that joined us in crossing over to embrace and show good faith in these rule reforms that we were able to secure through the Problem Solvers Caucus initiative, Break the Gridlock. Now, the Break the Gridlock package was not contained in its entirety in the rules package, but there are significant reforms that we were able to spearhead after over a year's worth of work that will empower members to really try to be rewarded for consensus legislation as opposed to penalized or having to go through that top-down driven organization that the House of Representatives has become, where the Speaker and the leadership essentially control every item that comes to the floor and does it in a way that the outcome is preordained. What my hope is by embracing these rule reforms, as my Democratic colleagues have done, we will show members that it's time for the People's House to work for the people and to be a forum of open and honest debate where you don't have last-minute negotiations, you don't have preordained bills that are negotiated by a handful of people in back rooms, but you actually have a process in the House of Representatives where members can advocate for their stakeholders, their constituents, their significant pieces of legislation that they came to D.C. to get enacted, and be rewarded and be given a path to the floor to have a debate on that initiative or that bill. And so with these reforms, I truly do believe we took a giant step in the right direction to reforming the House of Representatives to get away from this top-down driven organization that it's become, and to start to empower the people through their representatives in the House of Representatives to be a voice where they can carry that open and honest debate that we so need in America. And, I know this has been brought to my attention. This hasn't been done since, I think, 2001. I'm not aware of multiple members crossing over on a rules package vote, which typically is a partisan us versus them type of situation. And so I'm not aware of that ever occurring, but we can get the facts on that. But I know the last time a member from the other party supported a rules package was 2001. And so hopefully folks recognize that I am putting my voting card where my mouth is, and we are going to continue to advocate for additional reforms to get the House functioning in a way that allows initiatives to have their opportunity to be debated on the floor of the House and to engage in really what can become a constructive exercise, as opposed to continuing the status quo of us versus them politics and empowering extreme bases in both parties to control the floor in a way that, to me, is not healthy for that American democracy to thrive in the House of Representatives. So that being said, I just wanted to highlight that vote last week and go from there.
We're going to skip some of the questions. We'll go right to the second question. The questions that we skipped, it was not for really editorial purposes, except to say that some of the questions were, and this was recorded yesterday, about the upcoming Tuesday night presidential speech, which is a moot point because whatever Reed's predictions on it were obviously don't matter now. And then the other questions we edited out were about things that are specific to the Comedy Center over in Jamestown, which were kind of lengthy questions and answers. So getting right to it, starting out with Lucas Day.
Congressman, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Lucas.
Congressman, I know in a newspaper article last week, when talking about the House rules vote, you alluded to possible repercussions from the Republican leadership with your vote. Can you go into that a little bit further, if you don't mind?
Well, obviously, that is a situation and issues that are between me and a fellow member. So we won't comment any further on those issues. But I went into this eyes wide open. When you break away from the herd, obviously, those that want to maintain the status quo, those that like the us versus them type of fight, and also those that are committed to a pure ideology, are not going to. This is not going to sit well with them. So. I accept those consequences. I accept those potential concerns, and we just move forward. And at the end of the day, I think we're going to be in a very good position to be part of the solutions, because the silent majority of Americans are calling for us to set aside this partisan bickering, be proud Republicans, be proud Democrats, but at the end of the sign, remember, you're an American citizen first.
Did you have any prior conversations with Congressman Katko prior to his vote last week? Did you know that he was going to lean that?
Yeah, no, obviously we were communicating, many members of the Problem Solvers Caucus, and I appreciate my fellow caucus members stepping up to show that sign of good faith, and kudos to them for their leadership, for doing what they did and standing firm in their commitment to change the House for the better for the people. And so to John Katko and Brian Fitzpatrick, I tip my hat and I say, job well done, and glad to be part of the team that is trying to lead this change in Washington, D.C.
All right.
All right. Thanks, Lucas.
It's the Congressman Tom Reed weekly press call here on the Newsmaker show on WLEA. Next question came from Nick Reisman of Spectrum News.
Do you feel that the newly elected speaker will be more willing to kind of reach across the aisle there and kind of lend you guys support and work with you guys as well to kind of resolve this?
Well, I hope so. But obviously I do note that there is a fracture within the Democratic Party. We had a kind of a internal debate within the Republican Party since 2010, 2008 going forward. And I'm seeing the same thing unfold, but much more significant and sooner on the Democratic side. So, what it's going to take is true leaders stepping up and standing up to their base and that extreme portions of their party and say, you know what, let's find that common ground. Let's govern for the American people. And hopefully Nancy Pelosi, as well as Chuck Schumer, because we need Democratic votes in the Senate to get this done too, will realize that playing party politics when people are dying, when there are real threats that are coming across the border, should be something we all agree needs to be set aside and a compromise position reached.
Thank you.
Yep.
Dave Raleigh?
Well, good morning, Tom.
Hey, good morning, Dave.
Wanted to kind of shift gears a little bit. I know you have reintroduced the bill regarding the National Comedy Center in Jamestown. Maybe you have some thoughts. Do you think it's going to get through the Senate this time around?
I sincerely hope so. And this is a bill that obviously we're proud to drop, and hopefully working with our Senate partners as well as our Democratic partners in the Senate, we can find that path, because it is not a controversial bill at all. You look at what the National Comedy Center is, what it represents to America's history, and you look at the ratings and reviews. It's one of the top new attractions in America, as identified by various sources. And so why don't we join forces and highlight this and champion it the way that it rightfully should be. And, with Jamestown and Chautauqua County being the home of Lucille Ball and now the National Comedy Center, I think it's only right and prudent to make sure that the congressional record and our archives are clear, that we join in one voice to applaud such a rich heritage right in our backyard.
Now, what happened in the Senate? Did it just get caught up in the gridlock?
Yeah, I would say obviously that's a pretty good analysis of what happened in the Senate, and we'll continue to do our part in the House, and I'm very confident we'll be able to get this through the House in due time. But it's going to go to the Senate, and hopefully everyone can agree and put this on the fast track process, and the Senate can move very quickly or can move extremely slowly if at all. And so hopefully, from the lessons of last Congress, we can learn, and the senators will acknowledge that this is a good bill and a bill that needs to get to the finish line.
Okay, Tom. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Vaughn Golden.
Hey, Tom, I wanted to ask you about the pay-go provision in the rules package. Seems like something that would be right up your alley, but do you think that's going to work?
Obviously, I appreciate the fact that they retained a fiscal mechanism in the rules to protect the expansion of government. And I think that's why some of the folks on the Democratic side voted against the bill, is that they wanted to take that check valve, if you would, out of the rules completely. I'm an advocate of the cut-go, but I'm willing to accept the pay-go provision as an alternative. But I do appreciate the fact that it's in law. And what we're talking about here is that you have to at least have the upfront conversation about the cost of expanding government and how you're going to cover those costs so that we can try to get our government going in the right direction when it comes to our national debt crisis, and that's reducing our debt, not increasing it on the exorbitant amounts we see today. So I think pay-go is a good provision in the rules reform package, and I'm glad to see it retained. Now, obviously, if I had my choice, I would prefer the cut-go provision, but pay-go at least is there, and another reason why we were willing to show good faith and to support the rules package going forward.
Okay, and what else, just a few ideas, provision-wise, things we can do to close the deficit, ideas that you've discussed?
There's a bunch. Obviously, reining in the overall size of government is a great step in the right direction. Having the hard conversation about priorities and where we want to allocate taxpayer dollars. But then there's some other things that you can do across the board and not in just one area of the federal government, and that is to get these healthcare costs in America going down. If you can get healthcare costs going down, and I'm not talking about health insurance costs, I'm talking about direct healthcare costs. And there's a bunch of policies, just the reimbursement policies under Medicaid, Medicare is a start. Some issues of end-of-life care, some issues of getting at defensive medicine and unessential and kind of the excess that you get because of excessive tort exposure. And if you can rein in those healthcare costs, you can really put a huge damper into the cost of government overall. So, this is a conversation that's going to continue, and it's going to either happen proactively, and that's what I try to be in the school of thought on, to address it before it comes that catastrophe that I see clearly on the horizon, if not now upon us, when it comes to this national debt crisis going off. So stay tuned, but I think healthcare costs is an area we could unite and should be able to agree on. I think everyone agrees healthcare costs are a problem, and what we take care of in the government will also be able to help in the private health marketplace across to help private American citizens out too at the same time.
All right, thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll continue the questions for the Congressman. Stay with us.
In with the new and out with the old in the new year. We're talking fiber versus cable, and fiber wins. Empire Access with the fastest internet in town. Fiber speeds 100 meg down and 20 up, bundled with digital TV for just $65 a month. And if you want to share, stream, game, surf, and learn 10 times faster than that, upgrade to gigabit speed. Only available from Empire Access. Ditch that cable and make the switch today to the fastest fiber internet. Bundled with TV for just $65 a month. A savings of over $340. Online at empireaccess.com.
Checking in now with meteorologist Rob Carroll. Rob, you called that one right. We had some snow overnight.
Well, as my dad, Brian, used to say, even a broken clock is right twice a day. So how about that? Actually, it's worked out pretty well this week. We had the issues yesterday morning with the ice. Now we've gotten a little bit colder, and that has brought snow back into the forecast. And we're going to be seeing some lake effect snow showers and flurries over the next couple of days. Brian will pick up a couple of inches. It's going to be a lot worse to our west. Parts of Cattaraugus, Chautauqua, and southern Erie counties under a winter storm warning. They could have as much as 12 to 18 inches of snow by Thursday evening. Good news is we're far enough downstream from Lake Erie that the snow won't be quite as heavy here. Today, cloudy, breezy. There'll be periods of light snow. Temperatures will drift down through the 30s. We pick up an inch by evening. Sunrise earlier this morning was at 7:38. That's a minute earlier than yesterday. And sunset tonight will be at 4:57. Tomorrow and tonight, we'll see scattered snow showers. It'll be breezy. Nighttime lows will be 20 to 25. We could pick up an additional inch tonight. Tomorrow, scattered snow showers, breezy. Temperatures hold between 20 and 25. Snow showers and flurries will start to taper off tomorrow night. Will remain mostly cloudy with lows of 10 to 15. And then turning partly sunny for Friday, 20 to 25. Looks partly sunny and cold for the upcoming weekend, Brian.
Back on Newsmaker, next question came from the Canandaigua Messenger Post.
Messenger Post? Yeah, Tom, I have 3 questions. 2 of them would be just a yes or no, and the other one you probably need to elaborate a little bit on. Will you vote to open certain portions of the government, which is a vote I think may be happening today or very soon? That was question 1.
We're open to those potential proposals, but obviously you got to review them, look at them, and then also see what the ultimate strategy that will put in order to put pressure to open up the government and get a solution on this issue. So undecided at the present time, and we will see as we go forward this week.
Okay. The other question is, if the president calls for using his emergency power to go ahead and build the wall without Congress's approval, will you support that?
You know, my preferred path on the president taking action here is that we in Congress do our job and appropriate this money, and that we address this through resolving the shutdown at the same time, as well as immigration issues. Now, I do recognize the president does have broad authority to keep us safe when it comes to national security concerns. And there are national security threats at a broken border that need to be addressed. And so we will see what authority the president potentially exerts here, if and when he does. But my efforts right now are to focus on getting the government open through the legislative process.
Do you see it as an emergency that rises to the president taking that action?
I do see a crisis, and whether or not it's up to, we'll see what the president uses in regards to the authority upon which he exerts such action, if he takes such action. But I do see a crisis at the border. I do see threats that we should all be aware of. We have 2 children dying at the border. You have a law enforcement officer killed in the line of duty. Yeah, you have 7 known terrorists that have come through the borders just since October of last year. And that is very frustrating, because I've watched the press, and I'm very concerned that the press has forgotten the lesson of 9/11. Remember, 9/11 was caused by 19 individuals to kill 3,000 of our fellow American citizens on American soil right here in New York City. And to discount and say, well, there's only 7 potential terrorists coming through the border, and somehow that is not a crisis, it is just very foolish, and is something that people should really reconsider when they discount the nature of such a threat.
Okay. And the third question is, what funding sources do you support to pay for your plan for security in the wall? Which funding sources?
This is a priority, and this goes through the appropriations process. And so, this would come out of the Homeland Security bill, and obviously those resources are there to keep us safe as a nation. And so, I support the investments at the border to achieve border security, and we will make sure, doing our oversight responsibility, that what is deployed there is not just a wall, that it is things on top of a wall. A wall is part of the border security proposal. You're going to need more than that, and that is where I think those resources will ultimately end up.
You did mention that there's money in the Homeland
thanks,
Security.
Julie. Okay,
yes,
Julie, you got 3 questions, so I think we'll move on.
Oh, okay.
We got a whole list of people who
are... Alrighty, thank you.
Typically, we do 1 question. Thanks, Julie.
Yes.
Rick Miller?
Good morning, Congressman.
Hey, good morning, Rick.
What do you see as the impact of the shutdown in our district at this point? How many furloughed employees, federal employees, do we have? And what about food stamps and WIC, the farm programs? Those questions are all on the minds of people. And what do you see?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously the good news is that 75% of the government is fully funded throughout the fiscal year. And so that has minimized the nature of the impacts to the district itself. But there are folks, obviously, that are impacted, and not only employees that are potentially involved in this, but more importantly, you're starting to see services impact. You're starting to see, you rightfully point out, food stamps. You start to see the traveling public that district constituents are using at our airports and as they travel. And so that's why I don't believe it is politically or substantively tenable for the other side not to come to the table. I think it's time. It should have been done weeks ago. We were almost there. And I think at the end of the day, as each and every one of these impacts continue to percolate up, that will raise the pressure to resolve this, as well as substantively, as the risk become clearer and clearer to the American people, that they will say enough is enough and let's get it done and join us to take care of this.
But it's raising the pressure on Republicans as well, though.
Yeah,
I mean, you're
absolutely.
under pressure, I'm sure, to get things going, and we just it seems like something new has to come out. You know, like you said, the immigration, the border security, and what else can you?
Yeah. And so, Rick, I mean, this is, I think, I've been in conversations over the last week, and in particular over the last weekend, to see if there's through the Problem Solvers Caucus and other members who are joining us and saying this is foolish and this is something that needs to be addressed and should have been addressed. I think there's a parameters of a deal here. I think the Dreamers, obviously, is part of that conversation. I believe border security, obviously, is at the heart of this deal. I think there's also, in order to get 218 votes, you may have to use some other pressure points of disaster relief, as I indicated in my opening remarks. There are a lot of communities, a lot of parts of the country that have experienced huge disaster type of related situations and events, and they need the relief. And I will tell you, you start cobbling this together and build the sausage. There is a deal to be struck here, and we are working on that as we speak.
Thank you.
Yep.
Matt Hummel. Good morning, Congressman. How are you?
Doing well, Matt. How are you today?
Not too bad, thank you. I first wanted to seek comment during this conference, actually. Excuse me. Tracy Matrano pushed out a press release, and in it, she criticizes your supposed refusal or agreement with President Trump, rather, in refusing to approve a ending of a shutdown until they get the funding for the wall. She specifically said, and I quote, "To have a representative who is in lockstep with the president isn't just contrary to needs of our district, it is also wasteful, ineffective politics. It inevitably divides people, and it doesn't help the people being hurt." And I wanted to seek your comment on that.
Obviously, we fundamentally disagree with that assessment, and to obviously engage in partisan campaigning immediately in the new year, 2 years out from election, speaks for itself. And so I won't address the merits of such a baseless type of political comment, and focus on the substance. If people don't believe that we have threats coming through the border, then they didn't live through 9/11. They didn't live and talk to people that have been killed in the line of duty, as that law enforcement officer just recently was, by an illegal immigrant. They haven't looked at the families and the death of those two children that were caught up in the broken border system. And they haven't had the ability, I think, to recognize, because they're playing partisan politics and are so afraid of their bases when it comes to their party bases, that they're putting their party interest over that of the country. And so, we need to secure our border. There's a deal to be struck here, and we will be a voice to get that done in due time. And that due time is now, and my hope it would have been yesterday.
Now, it's become apparent that Tracy Matrano will run again in the next election, and without a doubt, there will probably be more people in the Democratic Party that try to run against you. Can you explain to our viewers, how can you balance the campaigning process with getting stuff done for your constituents? Because 2 years, if you think about it, is a relatively short time.
Well, obviously, what I believe is that if you focus on the issues and you focus on the policy, the politics will take care of itself. And the policy we've been advocating, we are very clear in our positions. We have advocated for our positions, I believe, very effectively, and we will continue to do that going forward. And we will fight extremism whenever we see it, and continue to do that as we go through any type of campaign. So, it's about balancing, but at the same time prioritizing by taking care of the people's business first and foremost, and that's what we're trying to do day in and day out, and then the politics takes care of itself.
All right, Terry Frank?
Yes, good morning, Tom.
Hey, good morning, Terry.
Just a quick question again regarding border security. Senator Manchin was on Fox News during the 9:30 time period or thereabouts, this morning, and they were talking about border security, and Joe Manchin has been a fairly moderate Democrat. He suggested going back and revisiting the Immigration Reform Act of 2013. Is that a possible starting point or off-ramp?
I think there's some merit in taking a look at those, not only 2013, but also look at what we did in the Problem Solvers Caucus. Look at what we did in regards to the immigration discharge petition. So there's a tremendous amount of work foundationally that has been done, and I believe that is going to be the groundworks of a framework that get this deal done over the next few days. I really think we're coming to the height of the political theater. And once that height occurs, we will move into substantive frameworks of a solution. And 2013, as well as other proposals out there, show where that path will lead.
You mentioned the problem solvers there for a moment, Tom. I did want to ask, do you have a piece of legislation that has been given consensus approval within the caucus that could be brought to the floor?
Possibly. We have one historically that we did about a year ago, and the frameworks of that are kind of a combination of border security, dealing with the Dreamers and the DACA situation, if you would, as well as some additional reforms. And so obviously we're in a new Congress with a new Problem Solvers Caucus makeup, so we have to go back to our membership and make sure that everyone is still on board with that type of proposal. And so stay tuned because there's many eager members of the Problem Solvers Caucus that want to solve this problem. And my hope is the work they will do will add and assist in breaking this gridlock.
Thank you, Tom.
Yep, thank you.
Last but not least, Jerry from the Buffalo News.
Hey, Tom, how you doing?
Good, Jerry. How you doing?
Good. A couple of shutdown-related questions for you. First of all, a few dozen of your fellow House members have vowed to either not take their pay or give their pay to charity for the length of the shutdown. I seem to recall you might have done that in one of the previous shutdowns. Are you doing that this time, and why or why not?
Yeah, so what we have done historically and will continue to do here, Jerry, is I'm not discussing the pay because to me it's about PR for a lot of folks that do this, and we've taken care of it before, and we will take care of it going forward in a private way, and that's what we've demonstrated historically, and we'll continue to do that going forward. I just feel uncomfortable trying to make a political headline out of this situation. Rather than just take care of it and do the right thing, and that right thing will be done.
Okay. Another thing about the shutdown, you've mentioned the deaths at the border, and you mentioned the 7 terrorists found at the border. 7 people have died in national parks since the shutdown. The national parks are not open. They're not supervised. People can do things that they wouldn't normally do. What's your concern about that? And should that have a priority in your thinking too, along with the problems at the border?
Absolutely good input, Jerry, and absolutely those deaths should be recognized too for what they are. Human tragedy that adds to the reasons and the loud voice that we should heed and say, look, this is wrong. This is not where we need to be governing from, and we should solve this problem sooner rather than later. And that's additional voices that you rightfully point out that need to be taken into consideration here.
Okay. And lastly, this was addressed a little bit, but I want you to go into further depth. I mean, you're a lawyer. You've read the Constitution. Do you think the president has the constitutional authority to take funds from the Defense Department, from appropriated programs in the Defense Department, and shift them to the border to build a wall?
It depends on exactly the nature of the threat that is identified. And, when you have threats such as 7 terrorists, that to me opens up the door to a legitimate debate of what is that threat, what is the magnitude of that threat, and given the nature of that threat, there is an argument to be made, a good faith argument to be made, that national security begs for the president to take action to secure our fellow American citizen safety.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
All right, that wraps it up. Thanks, guys.
All right, thanks. I just really appreciate it. Talk to you soon.
And that's a wrap for the Congressman Tom Reed Weekly Press Call at AM 1480 WLEA Hornell. Late in getting to the news. Let's do it now.